Okay, moving on swiftly. Our final session before lunch is Matchfixing from detection to sanctioning. And I'd like to welcome Jack Kennedy from Sportradar onto the stage. He's Sportradar's Intelligence and Investigations Manager. As many of you know, Sportradar, like Junior Sports Group, sit at the intersection between betting and sports and work with leagues to help them protect their competitions from match fixing. So, Jack, over to you. You coming up here?
Have you got the little clicker? Thanks very much, Tom. Can everybody hear me? Okay. It's actually a great introduction from Tom there. That's pretty much what I was going to say from the beginning. I'm here to talk about match fixing and taking it a journey from, it says detection, but actually from an initial strong betting pattern, which doesn't necessarily indicate that something is amiss in a game. But we're taking that right the way through to when individuals found guilty of match fixing are eventually sanctioned. So I'll start with a little background on Sportradar. I think most people here have some idea of what the company does. And then I'll talk more specifically about what I do in the integrity services. So the company, as we said, has interest in kind of sports data rights and the betting world. But I specifically am focusing on integrity in sporting events. And that's the pillar here I'm talking about today. So Sportradar, in some kind of our product, offers 400,000 matches a year, over 60 different sports. It's a very vast company. And our FDS, so that's our fraud detection system, and it's sort of integrity flag that we have, we offer, or we cover 290,000 matches per year. So the integrity services is a non-profit unit of the company, which is, I think, very important. And we're the world-leading supplier of monitoring and intelligence solutions based around betting-related manipulation and fighting against sporting corruption. And the company has partnered with UEFA since 2005, based off the back of a match-fixing investigation in Germany. And through the years, we've picked up a number of clients that we now work with across AFC, FIFA, NHL, and NBA, and now ITF into 2018. So we're covering, obviously, events within Spain for part of our FIFA contract, the top two divisions in Spanish football, and the cup competitions, and obviously ITF competitions held within Spain and beyond into the world. The FDS was analysed in 2015 in an independent study, and that's where we identify suspicious games. And the study upheld the practices that we take in place and says that if we say that a game is manipulated for betting purposes, essentially there'll be very few false positives, and it's highly likely that this is the case. And we're trusted by over 75 partners across 20 sports, and I've touched upon the majority there. But beyond things like more common sports like FIFA and tennis, we're working with esports in that industry as well, and even maybe less common sports across the world, such as like MotoGP and Formula 1. And through that, we're actually supporting law enforcement agencies when they kind of come across a match-fixing case. We supply input to them and work with them to kind of help, hopefully, put justice upon those who we believe are susceptible or responsible for manipulation. And you see there, actually, Interpol, I was lucky enough last month or September to present on the topic at the match-fixing task force meeting at Interpol's headquarters in Lyon. So monitoring detection is the first step that we have when we're identifying a manipulated game. And this here is our fraud detection system on the right-hand side. This is how it looks to one of our analysts. And you'll see that we're taking data from over 550 betting operators on sporting events on behalf of our federations. And as I said earlier, so that's 290,000 matches are monitored per year to look for signs of betting corruption. And in total, we've got 100 different full-time employees, and we're looking at, well, 5 billion data sets are processed per day in the FDS, which is quite mind-boggling. And it covers all throughout the year. So I'll take you through, as I said, a strong betting pattern to how we eventually report to our clients and then launch an investigation, be it with the federation or be it with a police unit, into these betting fraud cases. So monitoring, as I touched upon, if there's a strong betting pattern in a game, be it a strong odds movement in the pre-match betting markets, or if live betting markets aren't behaving as we might expect, the system automatically triggers an alert. And one of our specialized analysts will then look at this alert, and they will examine if there's any reason for that strong betting preference, any legitimate reason. And this could be any number of things. I mean, we know things like team news, if a significant player is out injured, even things like weather. These can affect all betting markets. So our analysts will look at this. If they decide that this betting pattern is illegitimate, then we will send out to a freelancer. So this is a journalist or somebody in a local country where the match was played. And we will send off a list of questions, things like team news. Did you hear any local rumors? Because although we can research these things by ourselves in the open source, there's a lot of information in things like local newspapers that these people also have human intelligence connections where they can be privy to certain different rumors that we might not see on the public source. Once we decided that this game was manipulated for betting purposes, we will then what's called escalate it, and we'll write reports for our client. And in that report, it will contain such information about what betting markets are of concern. It will have all the team lists, show all the betting data, fully complete for everything that the client could possibly want to know. And then up to them. If they then want to follow up with investigation afterwards, we're there to support. And it's these two key parts of highlighted here, the analysis and the investigation, which is where betting stakeholders can really assist us and kind of help to eradicate this betting corruption. Because we get input from bookmakers, that comes into our analysis stage. We'll look at if any bookmaker sees that any irregular activity in any specific markets, it's all taken into account. And so when we're trying to investigate with police forces, we can then contact the bookmaker and say, are you okay sharing this information with the police while they investigate the case? So in total, we've escalated over 4,000 games in 9 years. And that's obviously a very minute percentage per year, but that's still a significant number. Obviously, it's 400 or 500 games a year manipulated for betting purposes. And we all know that the harm that can have on the industry. And so here's a real-world example of how our FTS works. This is an international match played in 2016. You'll see here on the match view on the right-hand side, there's two lines here. The white line is our calculated odds. So that's how we believe the odds should move in a regular market. And this market was betting for at least 3 goals to be scored in the game. And you'll see the white line is steadily increasing as the match progresses from 0 minutes to 40 minutes is the clip here. And that's basically telling us that as the game goes on, it's becoming less likely for at least 3 goals to be scored. But what we were seeing in the betting market completely contradicted that. We saw a highly illogical betting pattern for at least 3 goals to be scored. And you'll actually see in this clip, which is now run a couple of times over, an extremely dodgy handball decision. It should be noted that match action and things like this, handball, that referees make bad decisions all the time, but primarily the data has driven our decision to decide that this game was manipulated. So the FIFA Organising Committee ultimately banned the referee for life. He appealed to CAS, and CAS upheld the decision, supported by the work that we did, both in monitoring and detection and in intelligence. And in total now, 279 individuals have been sanctioned with cases involving the use of our reports, and 35 individuals have been sanctioned in criminal court based partly on our reports. And this is what I do now. I'm in the intelligence investigation unit, so after we've highlighted the game, this is where my work really comes into it, and this is where a lot of work that bookmakers and people represented here have actually provided some input for successful cases for us. So the intelligence investigation services are there to identify and investigate integrity threats. So what we're taking in a sporting corruption world is taking the events on the pitch where we believe, or on the court where we believe certain individuals have manipulated the game, and then we want to try and identify who was responsible in the upper echelons of these manipulations, a way that we can assist, obviously, federations and police forces in their own investigations. It should be noted that, as I said, we've got 4,000 escalated games. So we have 4,000 confirmed manipulated matches where we know what players were playing, what teams were playing, and obviously not all that information can be found anywhere for a police force. So maybe in federation, if it's their first game, which we identify as manipulated, we have access to all this data where we can give them kind of a stepping start into an investigation. And also we provide due diligence services based around the same techniques that we have, looking for any kind of parties who represent integrity or business concern, and again, fully compliant with EU GDPR regulations. So in the intelligence unit, we began a few years after the monitoring side. Around 2013, 2014 was when we began kind of working more in the intelligence world, signed an MOU with Europol in 2014, which is still ongoing. And in 2015, we pushed heavily and the technological infrastructure of our intelligence team, kind of moving more into data collection, automated processes, kind of looking into the future. And currently we're now working with 21 federations and 2 state authorities from an intelligence angle. And there's an example case on the right-hand side where in Thailand individuals were banned based partly on intelligence that we gathered for the client. We profiled over 1,100 persons of interest now over that time. And when we're compiling a report, which I'll not go too much detail on the right-hand side, we take data from various sources. We take from our FDS, where we, as I said, have confirmed manipulation cases. We have access to things like phone records and historical bank transfer data through our work with police forces. Web articles, we have an in-house software developer, and he's developed a web crawler, but also a social media crawler, which can extract information from social media accounts of concern. And we have access to, obviously, a large number of connections in the industry, in the betting world, in the sporting world, and the police world, which can help supply human intelligence to target our investigations further. And that's why we make up one of our reports. And I've just got a brief example of the kind of things that we can do with betting data specifically. So this is a real-world example. I've actually blurred a lot of the names for GDPR. So if you can start with any base-level piece of information about one person, so we can start with an email address, a phone number, or even like a bettor's username, something that simple. So somebody signs up with an email address, which if proper KYC checks haven't been done, we can examine the full online footprint of that individual and find out who they really are. And it's checking across social media, but also website and domain registries, and various different searches across the web. In this real-world example, from this email address of the person of interest, we're actually unable to identify 4 different social media accounts. And through this, there's actually 3 new aliases that we have from this individual. So if a player was contacted with an approach from one of these alias accounts, we've identified who the individual is. And I think that's a really important thing because it's not arbitrarily obvious. And from there, we also identified the subject's location at that time. And just a couple of brief case studies. I took most of them out, but this is one involving a bookmaker work. We've had 4 successful court of arbitration sport cases now. Kind of verifies the work that we're doing, stands up to strong scrutiny. And this is a real collaboration case that we had with a bookmaker. The bookmaker contacted us with specific concerns around a game, and they requested that we formally investigate on their behalf. So they supplied us with registration details for the bettors of interest. I examined everything I possibly could about these individuals, and I formulated a network showing that they all were interconnected, but also they were interconnected with some of the players. And I wrote a report which conclusively proved avenues by which inside information on the game may have been exchanged. And the report was used by the bookmaker as evidence of foul play, and the bookmaker was able to withhold funds as a result, showing that they were effectively defrauded. So onto the conclusions. I'm sorry, this is horrifically cheesy, but match fixing, we know, is a threat to the integrity of sport, but also to the betting industry in general. Everyone wants to know that they're playing on a level playing field, and we are committed to that, supporting both industries at Sportradar. So let's fight together. I'm really sorry about that, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Any questions for Jack before we go to lunch? It's very bright down here. Okay? No? Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Jack.
Thanks very much, mate.
Thank you.